Hi everyone, this is Dennis here. In the room with me is, going around the room is Joe Lackett, Colin Talbert, Bob Flynn, Brian Miller, and Lindsay Middleton. And might be some other folks joining in. Basically, this is just a discussion to start talking about efforts that we've accomplished over the last 5 years, bringing that forward for sort of an all-PI workshop at the September, and then is it October? October, and then how this will lead into review in late January, and then eventually lead into the sort of what we include in the renewal proposal, probably next June or July. So this is really oriented toward the various activities and accomplishments. What we're trying to do with this workshop then in October is really provide a more comprehensive view of what we've accomplished in our research and engagement activities, and I think things have evolved over the years from the initial beginning, for us, of how we operated, and also, in a sense, a reflection of how the change in the, not the overall mission, but how the headquarters and USGS really started seeing, the importance of engagement and training. And so things have evolved even within the expectations from USGS to how we operate, and that has modified how things, the set of things that we've done over the years. So in doing that, sort of looking at what we did early on, take stock of these activities, talk about how certain things we've done in a much more focused area in certain disciplines, but then much of what we do is interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, and how these have shaped our delivery of information to meet management challenges across our domain. And I think something not highlighted here, but something that is really critical to how we've operated is actually then working across agencies, across organizations to be more effective in providing this information to our constituents, and constituents including the research community. So, and then the third bullet sort of start a discussion and start some thinking about how if we move toward a client-based research and delivery effort, what would that entail? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? What does that mean, the way that we structure our resources, our staffing, of how you all would work toward this collaborative platform, how we do, how do we solicit and work with these various constituents. So these are things that we've been discussing, at least internally, over the last 6 months or so. It's been becoming more part of the operational scheme here within the core group of folks here at Fort Collins, but then thinking about center-wide across the consortium, how we might do this. And then lastly, as we look at the accomplishments that we've made, the products, databases that we've put together, and we identify these critical products and start thinking about how we would package these for the 5-year review, and then eventually as part of background for the renewal activity. That's sort of the overall scheme of things. The way that the days break out, we have 2 sets of workshops. Essentially, we have the initial day-and-a-half meeting of the foundational science teams. Again, that's the climate impacts and adaptation teams. They'll start on Tuesday morning, October 11th, and end up on about noon on the 12th of how the foundational science groups what they've been doing and how they're interacting. And starting about 1:30 or at 1:30 on Wednesday the 12th, we'll have sort of the rest of the group come in. These would be the PIs, the research partners within the university partnerships. And I think, Jeff and I haven't really decided how to do this, but bring in some of the other partners from various groups that we've been working with, so that we sort of have a critical mass of researchers and potential, sort of stakeholders that we have worked with to really start looking at the way that we have conducted our research, how we deliver these, and how we might look at the sort of the coming year, FY17, and then beyond type of activities. That sort of set of discussions will take place Wednesday afternoon, all day Thursday, and most of Friday. What we want to do in the foundational science area, so I have two more slides, and then this slide and the next one, and we'll open up the discussion, is to review our activities of the past 5 years, how has the foundational science area has evolved, because initially we didn't really have these, but then in the first year that Jeff was here, we kind of established them. Has these, so what sort of outcomes have these delivered? How has this enhanced our collaboration with our stakeholders and between the foundational science areas? And I think this becomes a very important sort of feature, especially as we look at our current activities in the FY16, FY17 time period, and then how do we actually look at new directions? So these discussions kind of sets up some of the issues of how we've dealt with clients, because these foundational science areas were oriented toward working with various funded activities. As new activities emerged coming from various stakeholders, how do we accommodate those requests? And so thinking about how we've done that in each of the areas, but then also in collaboration, because I think there's some good examples recently from the Wed River activity in particular, where sort of a collaboration at multiple scales are taking place, and can we use that as an example of the type of stakeholder co-design, co-production efforts that we might do in the future, and how we might enable those to get more of those type of activities. And then as we look at the PI workshop, the 2.5 days, or 2 days that we'll be working on this, again, review the activities of the past 5 years, looking at sort of the way we've developed these goals, met our goals, and how, in a sense, how some of these funded research activities have changed over the 5 years, recognizing that we were pretty, I guess, naive on how we funded things initially, became much more strategic as we moved along, and has this been a benefit, or where the, I guess, how did the evolving ways that we funded projects help us or constrained us in what we did, and how we might look at these kind of funding opportunities? That leads into sort of our current set of activities, especially looking at our research activities that are more management-oriented, and thinking about the ways that has enabled us to do co-design for production. And again, looking into our FY17 augmentation year, as well as then post 17, we're into the center will be in a new 5-year period. And, it's part of that is in anticipation that we would be successful, but whether this particular consortium or structure will be successful or not isn't really is partly part of our discussions. But the North Central Climate Science Center, in whatever form, will still operate, and so any guidance that we can provide them in way of lessons learned, directions forward, I think will be helpful. Whoever runs the consortium, so not overestimating our chances or opportunities, but being realistic about that this would be an open competition. So that's sort of my view of this, and so just maybe go back and look at these workshop objectives and open it up for discussion about other things that you would like to see us entertain in these 4 days, other things that we might want to pay particular attention to during our discussions in October. Let me just...
well, Dennis, I'll start if it's okay. Andy Hansen.
Sure, Andy.
Thanks for the overview. Mostly, I just would say this sounds like a wonderful game plan. I really do think that we're in a great position to do this review of the past 5 years and to really assess what's worked well and what less so, and what holds promise for the future. So I guess that's my main comment. I really think this type of this set of workshops will be extremely useful because, and I say that because we have covered a lot of ground. The CSC has evolved, but the whole state of climate science and climate adaptation has evolved too, and so the evaluation is particularly timely. And then secondly, really thinking about who are the stakeholders for the CSC and what products do they need? I know in my mind I've never been as clear as I'd like to be about that question for the climate science centers in general, as opposed to the LCCs, for example, where that I think has been specified a little bit more in the enabling legislation. Anyway, I think this will be really helpful. So thanks for setting it up.
Thanks, Andy.
Dennis, this is Chris Anderson from Iowa, and I just want some clarification of how I should suggest Iowa State be involved in October, because of 2 reasons. One, since we were changing the PI on the grant that I'm on, I would need to make sure it could work for Peter to come, if that is what we want Iowa State to be able to do. Also, we have Diane Dubinsky, who's been involved before, working with Andy, in fact, and she might be interested. So we have a couple people who are interested, potentially, and I need to find out if we should go ahead and have them involved. But second of all, I know that, I believe Diane, but there's a group of people at Iowa State who are involved with the Midwest CSC RFP, a response to that. So I don't know if that changes the calculus or changes the eligibility is not quite the right word, but the interest in having Iowa State at this PI meeting.
Can I jump in? This is Diane.
Oh, sure.
And follow up on? Hi. So thanks, Chris. Good question. Number one is who should come to the meeting in October, and secondly, one of the agenda items that I thought we could provide at this meeting would be a discussion of how climate science centers are linking up. And just to give you all a very brief update, what happened was that University of Minnesota submitted a proposal for a Midwest CSC via Jessica Hellman and Sue Galadowicz, and Iowa State was one of the secondary kind of partners. So we're not one of the main partners in that proposal, but we're kind of listed as a secondary level. So we could potentially be involved in collaborating with them. And one of the roles that Minnesota folks thought would be good would be for Iowa State to be this sort of liaison between the North Central Climate Science Center and the Midwest CSC if they actually get funded. So I could give an update on that if we, I don't know when the funding would be decided upon, but that was a potential topic to discuss.
Great. And to answer Chris's earlier question, I anticipate both Peter and you, Diane, to be here. I think you should have, at least Diane, you should have received an invitation.
Yeah, and I'm planning to come as long as you want me to come. Yeah.
Yeah, no, especially as, you know, sort of just a PI and then, you know, an extra benefit, just your institutional relationship. I think some of the things that we may have offline of the main workshop proposal because of some of the federal guidance that we're receiving, we may have sort of a off-agenda university discussion of things.
Okay, sure.
Move forward.
Sounds good.
Yeah, there is a sort of a I don't know what you want to call it, just a weird thing that we have to keep some discussions separate from the joint discussions of how we would move forward as a university consortium.
Yeah, that's fine. But I think it would be great if Peter Walter could also come to talk about the other project.
He probably doesn't know about it yet, but I'll communicate with him.
We'll make sure that he's informed.
Okay.
Hey, Dennis, this is Jeff joining. Sorry I'm late, but I'm through security, so I should be able to listen in for the rest of the call.
Okay, great. Do you have any comments or questions, Jeff, at this point?
No, I'm afraid I'm just joining, so I'll just listen in and hear what else is said and so on.
Okay. I guess since maybe I'll put you on the spot, Jeff. Something that we haven't really talked about is this augmentation period. So for those who are not familiar with the initial funding period of the North Central Climate Science Center, it was initially set up as a 5-year commitment. Because of sort of looking at the changing structure and reevaluation and review scheduling, the headquarters and the national office for the Climate Science Centers decided to add 1 additional year to the original contracts of all the Climate Science Centers. So the recently competed ones in Alaska Northwest and Southeast had an extra year, and then they put the proposals in this last summer. We're in that same phase now, so we're ending our 5-year commitment. We have FY17, and I'm just now putting together a augmentation budget for the host institution. But what I don't know, Jeff, is have we plans, have we committed the resources of FY17, or what is the, I guess, plans for this augmentation year, especially as it gets into the foundational science areas? Because I think with the funded projects, we have a pretty good idea of what we want to do with them, and they're budgeted and resourced according to their plans. But within the foundational science areas, I don't think we really have discussed what it means to have this extra year.
Yeah, I think the past is kind of unfolded to have between, say, roughly 400K or 500K a year that we put towards either the foundational science area or the management focused projects. We have not made any commitments with that amount for 2017, so that we have some available funds. I have to check out the budget, depending on where we are with our 17 budget, containing a resolution or a different budget. But for the sake of estimation, let's say $400K is available for any kind of research funds, the general category, and that could be foundational science areas or hybrid of that with management-focused projects, and kind of intentionally reserved to consider sort of more of a agile and adaptive utilization of that type of money. And I think that's what I was hoping could be a major part of the conversation at the October meeting, is to think about, say, a given pot of money and a pool of experts, and how do we move forward with kind of actionable science or co-production that might be a bit more responsive to questions and needs as they come to us, or invest in university folks with the premonition of that research could support the client needs that are coming to us. I think there's two major issues. The first being, how do you kind of provide a detailed enough proposal that the Office of Acquisitions and Grants with the USGS can approve, or kind of see enough detail to satisfy their requirements, but still be open-ended. And the second issue on the university side is, how do you make it an attractive enough opportunity that university folks are willing to sign on to it, with respect to maybe how much money are they going to get, how much can they assume, how much is going to be kind of flexible, are they just on retainer and money comes in if a client need comes in. And so I think that would be kind of a big part of the discussion I'd like to have at the October meeting, is to think about those two issues, kind of detail enough for USGS and attractive enough for the university folks. And I think there are some examples. We'll prepare to kind of maybe brief people on those at the workshop and give people advance notice. There's the Landsat Science Team, kind of is one example I've been looking to say, there's foundational science that each team member on the Landsat Science does, but then they're available to help guide and direct the development of Landsat 9, at the same time that utilizing conducting science with Landsat 8 or previous Landsat data. Another example is the NASA's Air Quality Applied Science Team that did this similar thing, had a cadre of scientists funded, and then had them available to sort of be ready to answer questions that come through it. And I'm in communication with Lawrence Friedel at NASA, who's established that program. He's actually going to be visiting in September. I'll catch up with him on how that's working and a possible example. So I'll stop there. I think that kind of gives a sense of what we have available, about $400K, and the idea was to kind of see what we could do in this sort of adaptive and responsive type of setup for funding.
So the three items that I sort of identified, including the last one that you just mentioned, includes the sort of thinking about synthesis products, the various activities, these new initiatives that might work with the funded projects or with other stakeholders in a sense, new initiatives, and then this idea that you just generated about looking at co-production efforts, which are similar to, I guess, point 2, but much more focused on co-generation, co-production type things. And I think those are reasonable set of activities for us to think about in the October workshop. There may be other things that might emerge as training, capacity building efforts, and some other ways of enabling cross-agency, cross-partner collaboration, I think. But your input on what we discussed will be very helpful on this, given we'll have a short period of time to actually putting a plan together and executing it.
Yeah, I think the 2017 dollars kind of gives us a chance to experiment in a way that could provide some, at least 1 year example that could feed into the recompete proposals that might come from the community, seeing how it was kind of done, in this 2017 experimental year. I'd also ask anybody on the line if they have, kind of ideas where teams have been put together to be responsive to client needs. I think we're all ears to see those examples and to consider them, especially if it's, in particular, if it's federally funded. We can use that to kind of go to university and to USGS to say, this is acceptable through some authority that agency has, and use that as a possible example.
Floor is open.
So this is Diane. I guess I would suggest that there might be some projects that are already underway that could be augmented, and one of them that comes to mind is the PhenoCam data collection and data analysis, and I've talked to Jeff a little bit about that, because just keeping those things going and getting the data and maintaining the systems is, we're kind of running on, a little bit of money there. So keeping those things going over the longer term and then evaluating the results that we're getting from those images would be valuable. But then secondly, if there are projects where they're already funding is already available, but there could be some cost sharing, I can imagine a few examples of that where you could maybe get a bigger bang for your buck out of something that's already initiated, but another dimension to that project could be added.
Indeed, I think that that leveraging is kind of a big part of what we're looking for. Is that if someone's doing some work and it's ecologically based, or it's a human dimension, social ecological systems, but doesn't have kind of a climate science rigor behind it, that's what I think the climate science can bring to the table.
So, Andy, again, just one dimension, not necessarily for 17, but even between now and then, and maybe as part of a synthesis for 17, might be to return to sort of the core theme of the current foundational proposal of how basically how drought varies across the domain and what the implications of that are for ecological response and social capacity and adaptation. I had a really nice conversation with MTS at that Wind River workshop over lunch over, his group's work and specifically how best to characterize water balance on the east-west transect through the domain, and then how to use that characterization as inputs into ecological models, socio-ecological models, and I see in the literature there's a lot of movement, for example, on how to calculate ET that is much more reflective of humidity, which of course is one of the major things that varies across the domain. Anyway, I do think that that's a really fertile arena, and then it even comes into to what extent the plant and animal communities are how wide their sensitivity space is to climate change and how that varies from the eastern part of the system to the west. And then, of course, translating that into management so that we move in a much richer way to being able to communicate to our stakeholders how climate is projected to change and what the consequences of that might be for water yield and for plant growth and species distributions. I continue to think that's a really rich area to build on. Anyway, again, just a suggestion.
Yeah, Andy, this is Diane. I definitely agree that that would be a great way to pull all the pieces of the landscape together, because there is such an amazing gradient in moisture going from east to west. So I support that idea.
Yeah, I think it's a strong idea and fertile ground. Jeff saying that, and I don't know if Dennis mentioned, but the Adaptation Foundation Science Area is having a meeting at the end of next week, August, and one of the items, I believe, and Dennis, I think we were talking about, Brian, ignoring it, is kind of a decision. Kind of more articulation of the decision framework for the main DOI clients, BLM, Park Service, Navy, your recommendation, according to them. But the big three that we've been working with, BLM, Park, and to think about what their decision and governance structures dictate in terms of when science is more readily able to plug into that decision process. And if we could articulate that through the adaptation team and have a bit more of that available to the science team, I think it might help us to figure out how that drought or other climate-related issues, available precip, available moisture, temperatures, play into that decision structure. So I don't know, Dennis, if you or Brian's on the line. This is kind of a conversation that came out of Linda Joyce giving a webinar for the Adaptation Foundation Science Area, whereas I think the Forest Service has a pretty good, or I think we almost understand that better than maybe at least I do, the other agencies, in terms of kind of their kind of science documents that come out as official publications that help, and then a Forest Service plan revision requirement, and then those forest plans build on those science documents, and that schedule is kind of laid out, and Linda laid it out during her webinar, kind of brought this idea to us, or this interest in having that same type of information available for the Park Service, BLM, Fish and Wildlife Service. So I think that could be a useful thing to kind of go on in parallel with advancing the eco-drought and drought-related issues.
Yeah, so we'll have Linda joining us next week to discuss that further, and so we'll have a better sense of that probably after next Wednesday and Thursday's discussion with the Adaptation Working Group. I guess in this sort of thinking about FY17 time period, that an additional area of where we might look at use of resources might be in training or educational capacity building type efforts, and just keeping that in the back of our minds about, is there a cohort of individuals that we would like to bring together that would enhance our ability to be more effective with the projects that we have already in hand, lessons learned already from the research that we've done, as well as looking forward to the, I guess, post-17 time period, the next 5-year phase 2 of the Climate Science Center.
That sounds good, having Linda there, and that's the Forest Service example, and we certainly work with the Forest Service, but trying to use that to see what the DOI agencies are doing. Can we develop similar understanding of DOIs would be helpful. So it'll be there, and I think that's a good example to work on.
So this meeting and this presentation really was mostly just put some ideas more concretely on the table about our expectations and our objectives for the workshop, and start the sort of thinking about how we organize ourselves over the next 6 to 9 months as we start preparing the renewal. And so we don't need to spend a lot more time on this discussion. I would also, though, like to entertain just sort of a roundtable for the various PIs and foundational science areas, just for quick updates. We do have some time for that.
Dennis, sorry again, I joined late, but did you talk about the review as well as the recompete?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it. I didn't really talk about any of the details because those are still being worked out, but that this is in preparation for putting materials together for the January review.
Okay, great. And I think really at this point it's kind of a save the date and stay tuned. So as long as people are aware of it, it really is helpful, I think, to put our collective best foot forward on all the stuff we've done and kind of let that shine through during the January meeting. The better off everyone will be, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, thanks for the reminder. But I can't read who's on here, but maybe just going around, and maybe Jill can do a roll call of sort of just quick updates of maybe the foundational science areas and then some of the research projects.
It looks like Candida's on. Candida, would you like to give an update for the climate team?
Yes, hi, I'm here. Tues and I are on. We have been, I'm actually getting back just recently from maternity leave, so I'm catching up on things, and it's nice to be back at work. So we are wrapping up our first publication since I joined the team. Actually, second, we had the workshop report, but our first research paper coming out from the evapotranspiration work. I'm hoping to submit it before the end of this month. We have submitted an abstract to AGU in the work we have started doing with the MACA data set in evaluating those downscaling products from CMIP5 projections to evaluate all those models regarding their representation of potential evapotranspiration and drought indices. So we're hoping to get ahead of that pretty quickly in order to present it in December. So potentially by the October meeting, we're already going to have some early results. And what else did you choose?
Let me check. You said you're looking at the MACA data for that?
Correct. Yeah, we decided to dig in more deeply in those projects because we feel there's a good potential there, and there's a clear need for these high-resolution future climate data products. And so we want to be able to give a really good expert evaluation. So that's why we're focusing our efforts on that right now.
So Jeff, just kind of continuing on our previous conversation regarding the MACA data. And again, those who do not know, this is a 4-kilometer downscale data based on John Abastaglu's work. These are available on daily time scales. And again, it's an analog-based approach where, instead of, grid-based bias correction, they look at the analog weather for that day, historic analogs, look for historic analogs on very large scale. And so capturing and doing this bias correction in a much more physically consistent way. And so that was one reason we were interested. And the other was that the data set includes many of the ecologically relevant variables like radiation, wind, humidity. So, and we can kind of continue to do our drought-related work, our work on potential evapotranspiration using that data set. And of course, the resolution at 4 kilometers was quite appealing to us, although ecologists still feel 4 kilometers too coarse. But I think for the purposes of atmospheric stressors, I think we feel that should be adequate at this time. And of course, there is uncertainty coming from the driving data at 4 kilometers. There is certainly an inherent uncertainty at that scale because we are not really observing at those scales. But I'll be happy to answer any question related to MACA, but it's part of our bigger thinking on our drought-related work going forward. In the current newsletter, we did mention the issue of, and that's really emerging in the current scientific literature on, is the method of using potential evapotranspiration that's been used consistently in recent years, is it credible or salient? And where these papers are challenging the notion that the Penman-Monteith-based potential evapotranspiration estimations are kind of not incorporating some of the physiological changes that may be happening as the concentration of CO2 goes up in the atmosphere. So kind of this tension between the literature where one group is suggesting that higher CO2 will increase water use efficiency of plants and may actually reduce drought stress in the system. And on the other hand, we feel that another group kind of is saying that the stress from increasing atmospheric water demand will kind of win the situation where create all kind of extremes that may affect the plants. So I think we need to bring this academic discussion to real world situation, and we do intend to kind of address it using some station-based data and to look at what's really going on. So yeah, I guess this is kind of our grand plan with looking at drought, considering these high resolution data set, but also kind of then going into station-based high quality data and kind of verifying what's really going on.
So this is Jeff. I would say I think that's really strategic and excellent on several counts. One, I think it takes advantage of that essentially key work that Noah's doing and the final location there, Hobbit's work. It's exciting. It definitely ties into the drought concept we're working on. A last one, I guess, is that we've got Gabriel and our focus, more so than any other CSC, on this remote sensing of actual ET. That doesn't necessarily validate it with a different product, but at least we can tell how those two are kind of related. So I'd encourage us to keep in mind the actual ET and how that might feed into a research plan in this kind of ET research question. And lastly, I think the MACA data sets of national interest. I think it shows your evaluation would be valuable across the CSC network. A lot of people in Forest Service, Westward was created, are interested in MACA products. So I think it's excellent that did that, do that analysis of that product. Well petitioned with our folks we have to
Jeff, I think you were not quite clear. There's some interference, but I think I heard some of the things you said. One being using Gabriel's 1 kilometer ET data, and we've been in conversation with Gabriel quite a bit over recent times, and in part to work on the drought early warning framework, where we think combining real-time potential evapotranspiration and actually evapotranspiration information into a singular framework should produce a more robust drought early warning framework. So that said, we also would like to include that data into kind of a research mode, and so that's I kind of totally have that in my mind. On the marker data, I just wanted to mention that we wanted to create this kind of if North Central CSC is interested in marker data in a big way, we can use this data in different measures, and including the training data, which is which goes by metadata, which has all the different climate variables to work with at 4 kilometers, and then you have these projection data set also, based on the same training data available for most of the CMIP 5 models. So kind of a singular data trained on the same parent data is available and should be consistent data set for research use. So we do look forward to developing that.
Okay. All right, thanks, Imtiaz and Candida. How about Andy or Arjun for impact?
Yeah, Arjun, maybe I could give the overview first. So we've been pretty much completed the land use change portion of our work and have now been focused on vegetation response to climate change. We've identified, we basically have gone into more detail on our work plan and have identified three topical areas that we're looking into in much more detail. The first deals exactly with the issues that Imtiaz was just talking about, and that is to what extent across the domain would a given change in temperature influence water balance in ways that translate into influencing plant response. The second topic really deals with climate velocity, given the differences in rates of climate change and in topography. What does that mean for the ability of plant communities to track changes in climate across the domain? And then the third focus is heavily on how to manage in the context of the projected vegetation changes that are coming. So with regard to the first, this is couched in terms of a basic question about do ecosystems fundamentally differ in the way that climate change will be manifest and in the projected responses of vegetation to that. The question, I think, is really relevant to our domain because it does include the sharpest portion of the water balance gradient across North America. We have this remarkable transition from, more or less the Mississippi Valley, very favorable water balance, to the high plains, a very negative water balance, over quite a short distance. And thus a real opportunity to probe deeply into fundamentally how things like humidity possibly is induced by proximity, air masses moving in from the Gulf of Mexico, and differences in solar radiation possibly induced by cloudiness related to that humidity, do they lead to fundamental different trajectories of change in water balance with, say, a 1 degree C rise in overall temperature? One, and then two, gets into the evolutionary history of the plants and the extent to which interannual variation has been a selective pressure that influences the tolerances of plants to changes in water balance. So in that regard, we've been trying to probe deeply into the literature, really on what elements of water balance would differ across this ecotone, and what metrics would best reflect that for the past couple decades, but also importantly that can be projected into the future under different climate scenarios, and then how best to use data on tree species distributions and densities to basically evaluate tree species and community response to that. Before too long, we'd love to have a kind of a small group conversation with folks in across the domain, you know, specialists like MTS's group and Gabriel and Dennis and Diane, where we talk in some detail about this question of water balance and about what metrics best represent the water balance gradient across the system, and then how to best evaluate vegetation response to that. So we're kind of deep into the weeds on this question and find it really pretty fascinating. So I think that's kind of the big picture of what we've been doing this past month or so.
Okay, Andy, that sounds great. Go ahead, Dennis.
It's consistent with some of the discussions I've had with Gabriel and with Bill Parton on some of the analysis across the northern Great Plains. So putting together a synthesis activity on this might be something worth thinking about, putting together a nice documentation of these impacts and their potential consequences.
And Andy, this is Jeff. Hopefully you can hear me. Sorry about the noise in the background. But two comments. Well, first of all, it sounds great. It sounds really useful and helpful. But two specific things would be to maybe consider what the Science for Nature and People project, the SNAP working group that Molly Cross is leading on eco-drought. I know they're looking a lot at kind of historic drought and tree mortality. And Shelley Crosby, who's the postdoc on that project, sits at the North Central. So I just think that we should consider that inviting them into that circle with the synthesis work, because they're doing a lot, especially in the long term on that. The second question would be, are you looking at what particular climate projections are you using, downscaled or otherwise, and just ask that we make sure that we maybe stay in touch with, it sounds like you are, with Arjun and Candida. And you know, I hope that the selection of the model or the downscaling technique is less significant than maybe the emission scenarios or other differences you might see in tree species or habitat. But I would like to make sure we understand how much uncertainty is a function of the climate model and the downscaling technique that's used. You're probably thinking of that, but just to kind of take advantage of having the foundational climate team with the work you're doing.
Well, Jeff, those are questions we have too. You know, for example, the NASA NEX that we've used in the past, its ET is just based on temperature, as best I can tell, and would not consider this humidity gradient, which is probably pivotally important to consider. And then we just, so basically the types of things that MTS mentioned about wind speed and solar radiation and vapor pressure deficit being considered when it comes to ET is really important. How to get that under CMET 5, I'm looking forward to discussing with you all. Unfortunately, 4 kilometers really isn't going to be adequate for representing the spatial distribution of vegetation that exists out there. Anyway, so I'm very much in agreement with your points, and I think we have some, good thinking and collaboration to do to come up with possible answers.
Yeah, good.
Okay, I guess we don't have much time left. I don't know if Shannon, if you want to start off with sort of an update from recent workshops.
Yeah, sure. I wasn't as much going to talk about workshops as some of the products that we're working on. A few things just sort of under the overarching theme of how can social science and social science methods inform management-driven science and co-production, one of which is with the drought risk and adaptation in the interior project. We're going to be submitting the second paper from that project, I think this week, that is looking specifically at bison management in Southwest South Dakota, and then how the results of social science can inform simulation modeling. For the Wind River project, we did just have the workshop there a couple weeks ago with the managers, and it was pretty exciting because we had all of the 3 foundational science area team leads there. And Gaz was there, and Andy was there, and myself, obviously. And then we're working on that project with looking across the different science teams at what we're basically calling a micro-drought and the anatomy of the irrigation season last year, which actually is pretty much happening exactly the same thing this year with the way the climate system is interacting with the management system and the infrastructure and creating water shortages at Wind River Reservation. And then probably worth mentioning is we did find out recently that we're getting funding from the BIA to do a cottonwoods dendrochronology study there with Jonathan Friedman from USGS, and also integrating traditional ecological knowledge with that project. So that should get spinning up hopefully sometime this fall/winter. And then lastly, for the BLM Colorado Vulnerability Assessment, we are in the process of revising and resubmitting our paper that's looking at key design principles for an integrated social ecological systems vulnerability assessment. So that's probably all I'll mention for now. I don't know if you want to talk about the National Adaptation Forum at all, but
I think you should mention it. I was going to ask you to.
Okay. So
Shannon?
Talked about, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Before you go into that, can I just maybe keep on a back burner, or maybe think about, take it offline, but maybe with Diane and her work with phenocams and phenology might be something where that leveraging could happen. I don't know if your study with Jonathan and the BIA work goes that far east or into Jackson, but let's take that offline and think about, maybe that's like an augmentation type of thing, if it would fit in to think about more phenology in larger areas. But again, offline, because there's probably a lot to discuss, so just a little placeholder.
Sure.
Great.
Sure thing.
Thanks.
Yeah, so just quickly about the National Adaptation Forum, I think most people are probably aware, but the call for, so this is for the 2017 National Adaptation Forum in St. Paul, Minnesota, in May of 2017. So the call for session proposals is out now, and the deadline is September 30th. So there's several different conversations about proposal submissions. We're going to talk about this next week at the adaptation group workshop. There will apparently be another open solicitation out for posters and presentations sometime in October. I'm not sure when the exact date is. But if you go to the National Adaptation Forum website, you can see there's a pretty lengthy solicitation there for session proposals, and it's up there now. So, did you want me to say anything else about that, Dennis?
No, that's just, the highlights of that. And then you mentioned the adaptation working group, socio-ecological system group meeting next week. I think that's probably all the time we have to talk about right now.
Yep. Okay. I guess we're done for today then. Thanks for calling in, everyone, and we'll talk to you next month.
Thanks.